Thank you to my members for making this video possible. You guys are the best. Mwah. Before the Ring City came to light, before Sin woke from his slumber, even before the Hunter's moon rose, there was Ulasil. And in that lost, doomed land, FromSoftware created what I regard to be their greatest DLC to date, Artorias of the Abyss. Artorias of the Abyss wasn't just an expansion, it was a time machine. It sent players centuries into the past to witness the fall of Ulasil and the rise of the Abyss firsthand, not through vague item descriptions, but told through the soil, the sky, and most importantly, the royal wood. It was FromSoftware's first experience of giving us context to a story we had previously been left to piece together ourselves, and letting us uncover it in real time firsthand. In the world of Dark Souls, time is not a line. It's a spiral, fractured, distorted, tangled, and all over the place beyond reason. Thanks to the DLC, we explore one of the clearest examples of this. Darkroot Garden and the Royal Wood are exactly the same place, except one is a byproduct of a plague that began in the other. Without a doubt, Royal Wood is the best DLC area in all three games. From the very beginning, you understand that you are currently in the Darkroot Garden, just this time you enter from Sif's arena instead of Undead Parish, a calm but haunting place that makes you curious as to what exactly happened here. A place overrun by nature, home to giant cats and men made of bushes and ruling with other remnants of some kind of forgotten past, but you never really properly discover what that is in the base game. Sure, you might have a vague idea, but in terms of actuality, the base game doesn't present much. The Royal Wood is, at a minimum, 100 years into the past. A just as beautiful, vibrant, heavily guarded, and uncharacteristically very much alive place. It sits on the outskirt of Ulasil, a once prosperous land now teetering on the edge of abyss. Of course, I have to mention my absolute favorite thing. The physical game map of Royal Wood is exactly the same as Darkroot Garden. Royal Wood obviously has some minor differences, with it being the original intended state, like buildings and such, but as I mentioned before, it's glaringly clear that the two game maps are the same, and I think that is a very, very cool thing indeed, and something Miyazaki has never repeated. It's truly a one-in-a-lifetime experience. You've never been within the Royal Wood before the DLC, but at the same time, you have. You know exactly where to go because you have been here before. This time over, more paths are open to you, as the abyss has yet to swallow everything, and strange buildings lie in the background, but you have been here before. You know it like the back of your hand. Even the enemies are recognizable. The stone giants in Darkroot, literally just stone guardians of Ulasil. The gardeners, they move identical to Ents. In fact, Ents are probably my favorite enemy type in the entire franchise just because of how awesome their concept is. It's also super original. Gardeners who were not consumed by the abyss directly, but it's precisely because of the abyss that the plants around them entombed them. They're not a demon, nor a golem, nor a hollow, not even a product of the flame. They're just men turned into bush puppets by Manus. All of these things become an unconscious emotional loop between the past and present, which solidifies the player experience in finding the connection between timelines and geography. You will end up far more invested in the DLC than you intended to because, as I keep saying, you've already been through it before, just at a different point in time. You know where you are. It's one of the areas in the base game you travel a lot through within the beginning section of the game, but now you know the misfortune of it, and that has the power to make you quite sad, depending on how emotionally invested you get within the games, of course. When you walk through the moss-covered stones of Darkroot, you are walking through the Royal Wood, through echoes of Ulasil, retracing the steps of Artorias himself, and holding on to a fading memory of a kingdom lost to the abyss, and eventually history altogether. The player character is literally the last person to ever experience Ulasil or the Royal Wood in its capacity. Moving on from the depression, let's talk about the bosses, because this is where the DLC goes crazy. Artorias of the Abyss single-handedly brought to life Dark Souls 1's most memorable bosses. Actually, one of the most beloved bosses in Souls history began here. No gimmicks, no second phase, as you can cancel it with enough damage. Just pure, relentless aggression from the titular Abyss-riddled knight. The fight against Artorias feels much like a dance. Should you miss even a single step, you'll be humbled very, very fast. He birthed the beginning of the infamous millennia-level input reading we have today within FromSoftware games, although it might be tricky to tell, as Artorias was the infancy stage of this AI reading. The legacy of humanoid bosses he started. His moveset, his mechanics, everything was a huge step forward for FromSoftware in terms of boss design. Overall, the fight is simple, but its impression on the player is unforgettable. In fact, Artorias left so many gently placed flowers on the Dark Souls name that he would go on to become one of the key narrative points of the third game. Ulasil also housed a dragon so powerful you could avoid him completely because Miyazaki wasn't sure the player base had it in them to fight him. That dragon was Calamity itself. Calamit's fight wasn't just the first-fledged dragon fight in Souls history, it was the very first instance of one of Dark Souls' key gameplay mechanics. Always stand underneath the dragon. Calamit's breath attacks desecrated your health bar, his jaw packed a punch, and his tail was seemingly impossible to cut off without him playing you for a fool. So players actually found it more efficient to stand underneath him, manipulating his AI altogether. The only other dragon up until that point, Seath, was a comical attempt at dragon warfare. Funnily enough, the only boss Calamite could even be slightly compared to within Dark Souls 1 was Sif, another big target, best fought by hiding in between her legs. Calamite also presented another first for gameplay mechanics. Dragons are the most learnable boss type in Souls history. As cool as they are, unfortunately their downfall is their sheer size. Dragon targets within Dark Souls are very limited to learnable attack patterns because, well, they are dragons. Realistically, all they have is breath, jaw, and tail. Compared to jump attacks, frame-perfect grabs, parrying, gimmick fights, duo fights, bullshit AoEs, and surprise second phases, Calamite showed that whilst dragon equals scary, it also equals ease with patience. Plus, finally, victory achieving him made you feel like a god. He's terrifying, unpredictable, but also really fun to fight against, because he was truly something new for FromSoftware, as Miyazaki actually ended up scrapping the idea to fight the everlasting dragon at the bottom of Ash Lake. And of course, he ended up making Seath a joke. So Calamite was the first time Miyazaki learned to embrace his own confidence, and from that, we ended up having a glorious array of dragon fights in the future. And then Manus, of course, set the blueprint for every late-game Soulsborne boss ever. Everything just gets cranked all the way up to 11. Not just that. As the father of the Abyss, Manus rightfully set in stone the weight of the other bosses that are tied to the Abyss from that point forward. Whilst I myself am not good at the fight, it is hard to deny that the Four Kings are a joke in comparison to Dark Lurker, Fume Knight, the Burnt Ivory King, Midir, Pontiff Sullivan, the Abyss Watchers, Gundyr, and most iconically, Slave Knight Gale. Manus was your confirmation that the Abyss is to be feared after all. Gwyn does you the pleasure of masking the Abyss from you in the base game because he knew its true nature. But is it really such a surprise that Dark, aka Abyss, base damage went on to be the most impressive form of affinity attacking? In the modern age, everybody knows, if you're looking for an easy time, turn towards our glorious father, Manus, bringer of the most unbalanceable affinity of all time. Every area in the Artorias of the Abyss DLC oozes with environmental storytelling. The Royal Wood whispers of a once-proud kingdom. Ulasil Township screams in agony. And the Chasm of the Abyss, it almost devours you as you cross through it. Manus is proof that you should never fly too close to the sun, and Artorias himself shows what can happen if you try to take on tasks that might just be a little too big for you. FromSoftware stripped away what you thought you knew and presented them in another light. Shortcuts that lie in lifeless corners of Ulasil, deceptive layouts, enemies that bait your confidence and punish your panic, and most importantly, a knight that you thought conquered the Abyss turned out to be a fraud. It was never Artorias who conquered the Abyss. It was the player character. We killed Manus, we partly closed the chasm of the Abyss, but it was Artorias who took all of that fame from you. This DLC didn't just add content, it literally defined Dark Souls DLC content forever. PvP was expanded, introducing the Battle of Stoicism. New weapons and items were added, which meant you could get new equipment from boss souls and even new items to buy from merchants. And the lore, as I previously spoke about, got expanded. Gaps got filled in from the base game without really spoon-feeding the player with it. Artorias of the Abyss is the literal blueprint for Dark Souls. From the old hunters to the Ring City to even Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm sure you'll find similarities between them all, and that's only thanks to this more than a decade-old DLC. And yet I firmly believe that none of them have quite recaptured its balance of lore, gameplay, and meaning in the same way that Artorias of the Abyss did. The DLC itself isn't very long, but like I mentioned previously, its imprint within FromSoftware is completely undeniable. To finish off, there's also Sif, a moment that hits harder after the DLC than it did before. Saving Sif in the past, only to fight her in the future, knowing she remembers you. That's not just good game design, that's an emotional storytelling type that only FromSoftware can do. Artorias of the Abyss wasn't just a DLC. It became one of their core foundations of additional content, distilled into no more than 4, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4 unforgettable hours. It didn't need 10 new areas, no flashy visuals, bosses who needed to make a spectacle of themselves in their dying moments. It was a homely, brutal, beautiful, poetic, and above all, unforgettable place. And that's why I believe Artorias of the Abyss DLC is the best DLC FromSoftware has ever made, and probably will ever make. Fear the old blood, embolden yourself with the flame of ambition, seek less seek ash if you are made of fire, but above all else, remember the Abyss is the only thing that never changes. Until next time, praise the sun, and infuse your weapon with that dark gem already.
Don't you dare let yourself go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.